Chapter 15. Heroes to Zeros. At Ribbon Robotics, Nicholas Knox was sitting in an extremely comfortable office chair. It was upholstered in the finest leather and shone almost as brightly as his shoes, which were tucked neatly underneath him. Above the desk in front of him were 3 enormous computer screens, each of them displaying a patchwork of different video feeds. His grey-blue eyes flicked across them, scanning for likely prey. Knox's drones, formerly Penny Percival's drones, tiny robot wasps equipped with a camera, had been sent out far and wide, searching for people to enslave. He had tried gyms, army camps, universities, but Knox was not satisfied. You see, he was an ambitious man, but he was ambitious for all the wrong things, as most ambitious people are. He was the sort of person who would demand the most expensive thing on the menu, whether he liked it or not. If you plonked a tin of cold beans in a bowl, but charged £200 for it, that's what he'd want for tea. So when it came to building his own private army of human slaves, Nectar's private army, Knox reminded himself, at least for now, it had to be made up of the very best recruits. He was looking for something special. Knox reached forward with a long, mean-looking finger and tapped on one of the squares of video. It enlarged to focus on a military exercise going on in the hills on the outskirts of the town. Tough-looking soldiers were trekking up a slope with heavy backpacks, sweating despite the cold winter air. Knox sighed. He'd been tracking this unit for a few days now. They were training to join the Army's Special Elite Forces, and they seemed like the best. But somehow, he still wasn't satisfied. If he enslaved these soldiers and used them to try and seize power, if Nectar used them, he reminded himself again, at least for now, they'd just be met by other soldiers, many more of them. It wasn't going to be enough. He leaned forward and spoke into a microphone on the desk.
Drone 445, disengage. Track alternative targets.
There was a small, pleasing ping, and the soldiers on the video became smaller and smaller as the robot wasp abandoned its spying mission and flew onwards, searching for something more interesting to film. A few weeks on from his first day working alongside Carl, Murph had arrived at the school early, as usual, and taken up his customary position at the early drop desk. It was a miserable day outside, rain hammering down. One of those days when you'd actually sprint into school just to get dry. As he sat there shivering, Flora appeared with a cup of tea and a chessboard. She'd taken to dropping in on Murph at his early morning position and had been teaching him chess in between chats about how he was managing at the school. That morning, Flora was explaining what a bear king was as they waited for his friends to arrive. This usually happened in a very particular order. Billy was always late, and he always had an excuse. To be fair to him, it was normally because he'd accidentally inflated a part of his body to such a degree that he couldn't get out of the house, let alone into his long-suffering mum's car. Mary was always prompt, though Murph now knew that the first day they'd met was one of the last times she'd travelled into school via her yellow umbrella. Soon afterwards, Mr. Flash had caught her in the playing fields preparing to fly home and had shouted at her for a full 10 minutes.
Are you trying to get yourself caught, you ridiculous yellow creature?
He'd bellowed, almost turning the umbrella inside out.
Do you want to bring the cleaners down on us? No flying outside my classroom!
Mary had walked to and from school after that, except on very cloudy and wet days when she was confident she wouldn't be seen by anyone, least of all Mr. Flash. After Mary, Hilda would be next, dropped off in her father's old, green, but absolutely pristine Rolls-Royce. It purred as it pulled up outside the school gates. It was the sort of car you'd imagine the Queen to travel in, and Murph always found it odd that it was Hilda and not Her Majesty who jumped out, pigtails swinging, clasping a lunchbox. Round-faced and rosy-cheeked Hilda, oblivious to everything around her, even the rain. Just the very sight of her made Murph smile. was no exception. Mary was first, as usual, dashing in out of the rain and flumphing her umbrella just as Flora was finishing her chess tutorial.
And that's called a bad bishop.
Right, said Murph. Bear king, bad bishop. Better than a bad king, I guess.
Or a bare bishop, for that matter,
replied Flora.
Well, see you later.
Hilda came through the door at that moment, and she and Mary cornered Murph for an update on the mysterious photo he'd seen in Carl's workshop.
Have you found out anything else about him? Do you think he used to be operational?
Hilda wanted to know. Despite Mr. Flash's contempt for her horses and Mr. Drench's refusal to say any more about his days as a hero, she was still fascinated with the mysterious world of the Heroes Alliance.
I haven't managed to find out anything else yet,
Murph said,
but I'm keeping my eyes open, don't worry. How's CT going anyway? What's Flash been doing now he hasn't had a muffin to torch in weeks? Well, it's just PCAT non-stop,
said Mary.
But he still won't properly tell us anything about it. He just says, we'll need our wits about us. I know it's going to be awful,
said Billy in a panicky voice. He'd just puffed his way damply through the doors and caught the end of the conversation.
I heard some of the older kids laughing about it. Hero Day, they call it. I'm no hero. I bet it's some really scary tasks we have to do. It even sounds terrifying. P-cat. Like a fierce alien robot cat from space.
Billy was working himself up into a frenzy.
Calm down,
Hilda soothed him.
They're not going to give us anything we can't deal with.
Hilda, Mary and Billy said goodbye to Murph and began heading off towards their CT lesson. Murph was just about to brave the weather and make his way down to Carl's huts when something caught his attention outside the rainy front windows of the school. A small figure darted across the schoolyard and disappeared into the cloakroom, followed by 5 much larger figures.
What's going on there?
Murph wondered out loud.
What did you say?
Called Mary, who had overheard him down the corridor.
Oh, don't worry, just something weird over in the cloakrooms. I'll have a look on my way to Carl's,
replied Murph. Mary seemed keen to come back and see, but Billy tugged her away, terrified to be late for Mr. Flash. Murph got up from his desk and headed across the front yard. As he peeked into the cloakroom, his heart sank. He recognized them instantly. It was the goons from his lunch hall plate-smashing incident. There they all were, Gangly Fuzzface, Pork Belly Pig Breath, Corned Beef Boy, Crazy Eyes Jemima, and Frankenstein's nephew. He still didn't know their real names. Then, with a sinking heart, Murph spotted the smaller figure they had followed into the cloakroom. It was Nellie, the girl with green ends to her hair who could control storm clouds. Murph was worried she wouldn't be able to get herself out of this one. She wasn't the greatest talker. In fact, Murph couldn't remember a time she'd ever spoken, so she certainly wasn't going to start outwitting this gang of lumps now, who, incidentally, were now surrounding her at the back of the otherwise empty cloakroom.
Come on then,
grunted Pork Belly Pig Breath.
Make the rain disappear if you can. We want to go down the shop and spend all your money.
Frankenstein's nephew laughed. Nellie tried to push between 2 of them and run out of the cloakroom, but stopped abruptly as if she'd run into an invisible force field. She had. Gangly Fuzzface had used one of his force fields on her.
Oh, I don't think so,
sneered Fuzzface as he used his cape to drag Nellie back until she was pinned against the wall.
Come on, Weather Girl. If you can't stop the rain, we'll settle for your lunch money.
Nellie was glaring at them as if she was about to say something really rude, but couldn't quite make the words get past her lips. Murph wanted to help, but didn't know how. The 5 of them would crush him into a jam, put him in an attractive jar, and sell him at the annual Christmas craft market. And Murph hated Christmas craft markets. He hated the fact that he couldn't pluck up the courage to do something. He was so frustrated with himself that he made a small growling noise.
Who's there?
Barked Fuzzface. Before Murph knew it, a meaty hand had plucked him out of the coats like a claw picks up teddy bears in one of those fairground machines. Unfortunately, unlike the claws at fairgrounds, the hand didn't drop him. Instead, he was plonked down beside Nellie by Corned Beef Boy. He looked even more meat-like up close. Murph realized there was nothing for it. He was going to have to stand up for himself and Nellie. It was 5 against 2. and the 5 were as big as the 2 were small. He thought he'd lead off with that fact.
Oh yeah, really heroic guys. 5 of you picking on 2 first years, said Murph.
What are you talking about?
Snarled Crazy Eyes Jemima.
We've got 4 of you now.
No, we haven't,
sighed Fuzzface quietly.
Why don't you ever remember your glasses? Great, said Murph. One of you can count at least. Easy now, Titch. Don't get cocky with us. Remember what happened the last time,
said Fuzzface.
And as we've established, there are only 2 of you. Make that 5,
said a voice behind him. Mary, Billy, and Hilda were silhouetted in the doorway.
You lot are pathetic,
jeered Mary to the assorted freak show.
You really think the Alliance is going to be impressed? Oh, great, I'm in trouble. I know what I'll do. I'll call for those bullying idiots that think stealing people's money's okay.
It's a good job there was no sarcasm detector nearby. It would probably have exploded.
Well, look what we've got here. A little yellow birdie,
sneered Fuzzface, taking in Mary's yellow dress and umbrella.
What's your name? Mary Canary? Well, normally they just call me Mary,
said Mary confidently.
Do you live in a dairy?
Guffawed Corned Beef Boy.
Yes. How did you know that?
Asked Mary, momentarily confused, but she rallied admirably.
Anyway, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you abusing your capes by bullying first years and trying to steal from them. Can't wait to let Mr. Flash know what sort of heroes he's training in your year.
Amazingly, Mary's words seemed to have hit home. The bullies shuffled about awkwardly. Mary didn't know, but they were actually some of Mr. Flash's favourite students, and he had them marked out for great things. They were indeed hoping he'd recommend them to the Heroes Alliance.
We were only joking. We weren't really going to take her money,
mumbled Fuzzface.
Well, let me tell you, that is a rubbish joke,
replied Hilda tartly.
Come on, Murph. Come on, Nellie. Let's leave these creeps hanging around the junior cloakroom.
Murph sailed past Frankenstein's nephew and Corned Beef Boy like a tiny tugboat between 2 ugly old battleships. Nellie trailed after him with her hair hanging over her face and one damp, untied shoelace flapping behind her. All 5 of them walked out of the cloakroom unscathed.
We did it,
infused Hilda in a whisper.
We stuck together and defeated the forces of evil. We're heroes.
And there was definitely a spring in their step as they marched away from the cloakroom. Mary, in high spirits, put up her yellow umbrella and used it to leap over a large puddle.
Can you even fly without that stupid brolly Mary Canary?
Came a cruel voice from behind them. Fuzzface and his cohorts had gathered in the cloakroom doorway to get the last word.
You think we're never going to make it as heroes? What about you, losers? A kid with no cape and his rubbish friends. Heroes? Zeros, more like. There they go, look. The Super Zeros.
The rest of his sheep started laughing too.
Yeah, Super Zeros. Good one,
chortled Crazy Eyes.
You better stay out of our way, Super Zeros. All 10 of you.